The best thing you can do for your heart. You think the pastor's going to be talking about the heart in my chest or the heart I wear on my sleeve?
Yeah, I don't know, but I have spent so much time this week, especially after looking at the pastor's post on the internet, and I think that maybe it could be about the spiritual or the emotional heart, such as, let's say, I say, Giselle, I really like being your friend because you have a really good heart, that kind of heart.
Yeah, but what does that mean, Missy, that I have a really good heart?
Well, you're kind, you're sensitive, you always do the right things.
Yeah, but what do you think makes me want to do those things? I mean, they were just saying that if you really want to know where someone's heart is, you just have to see where they spend their money.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're saying.
Oh, yeah, so
What?
do you want to know where your heart is this morning?
Maybe.
All right, then hand it over.
What?
Your checkbook. Let's take a look. I want to see where your heart is. Take 10 seconds. Simple little test.
Okay.
Oh, come on. All right, let's take a look. Okay, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Missy, according to this, your heart belongs to Nordstrom.
Oh. No. Come on, that was only one day.
It's in black and white.
No. Flip a little bit more, just a few more.
Okay.
I have a really generous heart, really.
Okay. University, church, building fund. Are you looking for them to name a room after you? A chair or something? Wow.
No, not exactly. But you know what? That was nothing compared to what my grandma did. I mean, and I'm not even talking about money. I mean, my grandma, she did everything to care for the people in this church.
You're so right. I remember her, and her heart really was in the right place. She was so generous with her time and money. Her heart was just so big, she never met a stranger. There's so many times I wish I could take her heart and just transplant it into mine. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Excuse me, girls. I can't help but be impressed with how much you know about the human heart.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. I'm a nurse, so I know a lot about the heart. If there's anything, I'm just saying. You're so flattering. If there's anything you want to know about the heart, you can just ask me.
Thank you.
Oh, and don't
problem.
forget, I have spent 7 whole days this whole week writing notes. Do you know that the heart is very complicated? And if you would like to look at my notes and maybe make some notes of your own,
Great idea.
I could let you borrow my notebook.
Okay. I'm sure I can find some use for this in my line of work.
In that case, you know what? You just keep it. You just keep it and you study it. And seriously, if you ever need to know anything else about the heart, don't hesitate to ask me. And you know what? In fact, I'll send you some resources.
The best thing you can do for your worship experience at the Loma Linda University Church is to know who you're seated next to. Caring for the heart can be difficult. You know the reality of that, especially in a day and age of Super Size Me and Krispy Kremes and Haagen-Dazs and couch potatoes. Caring for the heart can be a very challenging experience. I suppose that's part of why I said yes when my dearly beloved Anita said to me, "Do you want to go to boot camp?" Boot camp? What is boot camp? Well, I can tell you from this perspective exactly what boot camp is. Boot camp is 1 hour of unendurable suffering. I agreed, okay, let's go. And so down to Drayson Center we went. We signed up and we joined. And an hour a day, 4 days a week, 6 a.m. boot camp. It was quite an experience. I remember the morning, we had been into it a little while by then, when I showed up and only one other person showed up besides the instructor. It just so happened that day that the one other person that showed up was a young woman that I had never seen before. And so we got ready, and when the instructor got there, she said, "Okay, here we go," and off we went with all the different routines of boot camp. Push-ups and sit-ups and running stairs and planks and bear crawls, all kinds of inhumane treatment. But finally, at the end, we came to what, to me, was the most challenging drill of them all. It's called the suicide drill. I'd like to find whoever named it that and give them an award for fairness and honesty in reporting, because that's exactly what it is. But I thought, I can't let this young lady beat me. I have got to somehow stay up with her. And so we started back and forth on the court, back and forth, further and further running, and she was ahead of me, and she stayed ahead of me. And I was pushing and huffing and puffing and trying to stay up. I almost caught her at the end, but I ended still eating her dust. At the end, I walked over to her and I said, "Wow, I just have to congratulate you. You're in great shape. I could hardly stay up with you." And she said to me, "Oh, no, you did great. My father could never have done that." I had a whole different pain in my heart then. It's all in the attempt to have a healthy body and a healthy heart. And what I have discovered is undeniably true, is that having a healthy heart can be very difficult. In fact, did you hear the person who said that jogging is like banging your head against the wall? It feels so good when you stop. Having a healthy heart can be a challenge. Now, what's interesting is that Scripture has a great deal to say about the heart. Whether you read the Old Testament or the New, you soon come to statements, to comments, to stories about the heart. But as you read those statements and comments and stories, you soon begin to think, I don't think that the writers of the Bible, generally speaking, are speaking about this fist-sized pump that palpitates in your chest and mine. I think they're talking about something else. And the truth is that is exactly right. Because in the Scripture, when it speaks about the heart, most of the times it is speaking about the core of who we are, the essence that is right at the center of our total personality. It is that place where we live and think and choose and decide and believe and doubt. That's the core essence of what it means to be a human being. Jesus himself had a lot to say about the heart. It only takes reading a little ways into the gospel before you start to encounter his statements. "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." He says that at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. He continues later, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." On a later occasion, he's in debate with those who are trying to catch him in his words. He looks at them and he says, "How can you who are evil speak good things? Because out of the abundance, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks." And there was even an occasion when he said this. He said, "It's not what goes into your mouth that makes a man or a woman impure or unclean. Rather, it's what comes out of your mouth. What comes out of your mouth both makes you and gives evidence of your uncleanness." Because, he said, out of the mouth comes what is in the heart, and in the heart is sin and selfishness and deceit and lust and anger and all of the other realities that go along with a fallen nature. Jesus had a great deal to say about the heart. We have to be sure we understand what we're talking about when we talk about the heart, because it does get used in different ways. In fact, if you go to dictionary.com, you will discover that between its noun and verb and idiom forms, dictionary.com gives 43 definitions to the word heart. The very first definition is that instrument, that muscle, that organ in our chests that keeps us alive, that keeps us moving. But the definition that interests me today is the definition that says heart, the center of your total personality. Heart. And so today we come with the question, what is the best thing you can do for your heart? Well, I want to turn your attention to the Old Testament book of Proverbs. We're going to the wisdom literature, the Old Testament book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 4. Proverbs chapter 4 is about acquiring wisdom. In fact, in the TNIV, the version from which we are reading today, the version in your pew Bible, it gives it one heading. The entire chapter has just one heading. Here it is, get wisdom at any cost. In other words, do whatever you have to do, says the ancient wise man, but make sure that you attain wisdom. It is in the context of that discussion about wisdom that he gives us a section that I believe will give us an answer to the question, what is the very best thing you can do for your heart? It comes toward the end of the chapter. At the end of the chapter, there's a segment where he talks to a young man. He calls him my son. It could be that it's literally his son, or he could be using that in an affectionate way of any other young man. But he comes to this section that he writes and speaks to the one called my son, and he gives him some instruction from which we can benefit today. So Proverbs 4, we're going to read from there. This section has 3 segments to it. The first segment is the segment in which the wise man is trying to get the attention of this young man. It's as though he's a parent and is looking at him and saying, listen to me, look at me, look at me. I want to see your eyes watching me because what I'm going to tell you is very important. So let's read that first segment. Proverbs chapter 4, starting with verse 20. The wise man writes, my son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body. You can summarize that entire statement with the words, pay attention. In fact, he says that literally in 4 different ways. You caught it. He says, pay attention, turn your ear to my words, don't let them escape you. Keep them within your heart. In other words, we quickly know he feels passionate about what it is that he is about to say because he's waving his arms and saying, pay attention. Don't miss this. Well, why, wise man? Why is what you are about to say so important? And he answers that. He says, because it's life and it's health. So don't miss it. All right, you've got our attention. We're listening. What is your message? He gives us the essence of his message in one verse. Verse 23. Listen to what it says. He says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Above all else. In other words, priority number 1, at the top of the list, more important than anything else, this comes first. What is it? Guard your heart. Guard your heart. I like the way the New Living Translation renders that verse. Here is how the NLT renders it. It says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. In other words, everything starts in the heart, but what is in the heart will soon be in the life. And so if you're concerned about how you live your life, about living your life in a wise way, about living your life in a righteous way, then, says the wise man, rule number 1, take care of your heart. Guard it, the center of who you are. Now, Christian writers throughout the centuries have been busy with that very concept and have echoed what the wise man says here in different ways. One of the ways in which it is echoed is in this way, words that you might recognize from the pen of Ellen White. Listen to what she wrote. We have a work to do, she says. We have a work to do to resist temptation. Those who would not fall a prey to Satan's devices must guard well the avenues of the soul. The mind should not be left to wander at random upon every subject that the adversary of souls may suggest. Does that sound restrictive to you? Don't just let your mind wander onto anything that presents itself. If it sounds restrictive, consider this. It's the very same kind of advice that your doctor gave you about your physical heart when you last had your physical examination. Your doctor pulled up her chair after the examination and said to you, now listen, you've got to cut out those intimate dinners for two unless there's someone else with you. In other words, you can't just eat anything that happens to cross your table. You're not at liberty to do that and still be able to have a healthy physical heart. The wise man, Ellen White, they're just saying the same thing. When it comes to our spiritual heart, we have many opportunities that come our way every single day of subjects on which our minds will linger. The wise man says, guard your heart. The pen of Ellen White says, guard well the avenues of the soul. So what exactly are those avenues? Another way to ask the question is to ask, how exactly do we guard the heart? Well, the wise man's going to answer our question. We go back to Proverbs 4 because as soon as he has given us the principle, guard your heart well, for out of it will flow your life, he then comes to telling us how to do it. Back to Proverbs 4, beginning this time in verse 24. He writes, keep your mouth free from perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead, fix your gaze directly before you, give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left, keep your foot from evil. He points out three ways in which we can guard our hearts. He says, careful about what you see, careful about what you say, careful about where you go. Because all of those are avenues to your heart. Now, if we talk about the physical heart, in this medical community, we know something about how to care for it. We know something about the avenues to that heart. If we're talking about the physical heart, we would say, among whatever else you might do, at least three things become important. What you eat, what you drink, whether or not you exercise. If you don't ever worry about those three, you may have serious concerns about the state of your heart. Well, the wise man says the same thing about our spiritual heart, the core essence of who we are. Guard the avenues of the soul well. What are the avenues of the soul? Well, among whatever else might answer that question, we would have to say that two are primary. What we see, what we hear. What we see and what we hear has an undeniable effect on the health of our heart. Guard well the avenues of the soul. But Randy, you say, wait a minute, wait. We live in a world where we are barraged with messages all the time. I would agree. That is absolutely the case. In fact, I went on a search mission to try to find out exactly how many messages they believe every one of us gets every single day. The number was very broad. It depended what organization, what research study was quoted. The number went all the way from the hundreds to the thousands every single day. I tend to think that the hundreds is more realistic, but I haven't done the research. But what if we narrowed it down just to the advertisements that we get? Once again, the numbers vary. But on one thing, everyone agrees. We are barraged with a constant, steady stream of advertising, always coming our way, always trying to catch us, to capture us, to lure us, to get us to buy into what they say will make life happy. That's the reality of our world. The statistic I ran across that I found the most interesting was this. A person living in our day and time will experience the same number of advertisements of all kinds, of advertisements in 1 year that a person living 50 years ago would have experienced in an entire lifetime. In 1 year. Everywhere we go, it's there, and it's all sending us a message. Listen to these words written by Louise Story in the New York Times in an article she entitled, "Anywhere the Eye Can See, It's Likely to See an Ad." Story writes, advertisers seem determined to fill every last space with an advertisement. Supermarket eggs have been stamped with the names of television shows. Subway turnstiles bear messages from auto insurance companies. Chinese food cartons promote certain airlines. And another airline, are you ready for this? Another airline is selling ads on motion sickness bags. Can you imagine? While the person next to you is tossing their cookies all over you, you can look at the bag that it was supposed to go in and realize, oh, I think I'll fly that airline next time. Everywhere we look. And the trays used in airport security lines have been hawking certain brands of watches for some time now. She continues, marketers used to try their hardest to reach people at home when they were watching TV, when they were reading the newspaper or magazines, but consumers' viewing and reading habits are so scattershot now that many advertisers say the best way to reach time-pressed consumers is to try to catch their eye literally at every turn. At every turn. A woman named Linda Kaplan-Thaler, chief executive of the Kaplan-Thaler Group, a New York ad agency, says this: we never know where the consumer is going to be at any point in time, so we have to find a way to be everywhere. Omnipresence, she says, omnipresence is the new distinctiveness. In other words, how do we stand out? We stand out because we are everywhere. You cannot escape us. Sometimes it's creatively done. You remember the Got Milk campaign? The campaign that was advertising milk, hoping that people would buy more milk. You remember, it was well done. A person would be in the middle of a large bite of a peanut butter cookie. A sugarless, fat-free peanut butter cookie. But the bite was too big, and he couldn't swallow, and so immediately he's frantically looking for milk, and the carton is empty. And then comes up the caption, "Got milk?" Up in San Francisco Bay, they got an idea. And so the ads that went up around the city for the Got Milk campaign that not only had the milk, but also had the cookies, they built them in such a way that every little bit, they would emit the aroma of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. So that people walking by, man, I feel a hankering for Mrs. Fields. You know that the city said, no, that's not fair, we don't like that, and they forced them to take it down. Fairly harmless ad, it seems to me, but trying to sell. And that's the reality. Everywhere we go, somebody is trying to sell us their version of happiness and life and meaning and fulfillment. Some of them are innocent and good and funny, some questionable, and some are selling us a version of life that is deadly to our spiritual souls. Here's the question. Do we take it all in uncritically, thoughtlessly, without questioning what the message being sold is? In fact, the truth is we can't talk about this without talking about entertainment, about books and stories and movies and television shows. Let me tell you, I have and continue to consume all of the above. But I realize that in every story, in every book, in every show, in every movie, there is a message. Every good story, that is telling some kind of a principle. It has a message to offer you about life. That is the much more subtle underlining. In fact, in a class down at Fuller Seminary when I was in my doctoral program, our professor, who had feet in both worlds, in theology and in the world of film and television, said, the problem with much of the entertainment is not that it might have a questionable scene here or a questionable word there. That's obvious. That's out there. You can even read in advance and decide whether or not that's enough to turn you away. He said, the bigger question is, what is the message? What version of life is this selling? And then he went one step further. He said, the truth is that many families could redeem their television viewing time if they would, after the show had finished, after the television had been turned off, if they would not just simply evaporate into all their separate rooms, but would instead sit down and ask each other that question. What version of life, what message was that show selling? Do we agree with it? Do we not? If we do, why do we? If we don't, why don't we? But that requires thought and time and conversation. But thought and time and conversation can lead to a healthy heart. The messages are out there. They are everywhere. We know them. We understand them when it comes to the physical heart. We know that we can't eat everything that happens to cross our table and still be healthy. When we were in boot camp one Friday morning, the instructor said to us, now it's the weekend. You have 2 days off. She looked at all of us and said, so go easy on the Mexican food. She looked at all of us, but I knew she was talking to me. Go easy on the Mexican food, she said. And if you must have it, only eat 7 chips. And I said, at a time? We intuitively know that about our physical heart. But somehow we miss it in the spiritual realm. We miss the reality that we are being inundated with messages from the culture all around us, and we too quickly and too easily take them in without giving them thought. So what is the best thing you can do for your heart? Well, I wonder if the best thing you can do for your heart wouldn't be this. Wouldn't be to go all the way back to childhood, all the way back to those years when we were small. And when we went to Sabbath school and we came to church and our parents asked us the question, would you like to invite Jesus into your heart? And we said yes. What if the best thing we could do for the health of our heart, the best way we could guard the health of our heart, is just simply to ask Jesus every day to be a resident in our lives? Maybe we could follow up on the words of Paul, both to the Colossians and to the Ephesians, when he says to them, now my prayer for you is this, that Christ might be more and more at home in your heart. He could have used 2 words in the original language there. One of them that means that you're at home in a place, but it's your temporary abode. You're not here permanently. You will move on. But the second word, the word that he used, is a word that speaks of a permanent abode. This is a place where I settle down and I make myself at home because I'm planning to stay. That's the word he uses. My prayer is that Christ might be more and more at home in your hearts. That may be the best thing of all we can do to guard our hearts. This past week, I had the privilege of talking with a gentleman named Stephen Corbett. Stephen Corbett works on the staff of a church in Abilene, Texas, the South Hills Church of Christ. Stephen Corbett says they have a worship planning team. Gets together just as we do and as many churches have. And they're always on the lookout for creative ways to illustrate and to drive home the point of the message, the point of the passage. Several years ago, Stephen told me, our pastor called me on a Tuesday and said, listen, for this weekend's sermon, I really want something that illustrates that reality that Paul speaks of, more and more at home in your hearts. But we live in a culture, in a society where messages come at us from every direction. Can you help me with that, Stephen? So Stephen got a friend of his, member of the men's ministry, member of the drama ministry, and said, hey, come with me, Ray. Let's go downtown Abilene, Texas. I have a few ideas, but let's see if we can put something together for this weekend's service that will illustrate that point. So this morning, as we think about what is the best thing you can do for your heart, I want you to see what Stephen and Ray put together. Watch on your screens.
Sugar, oh honey, honey.
Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be if you stop me up, if you stop me up, I'll never stop. Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Stop in the name of love. I am a rock, I am it all.
Bad to the bone. Bad. 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 Ice, ice, baby. Ice, ice, baby.
For your heart. Could it be that the very best thing you can do for your heart is to guard it? And the very best way you can guard it is to continually, as a discipline, on a daily basis, to open your heart to the presence of Jesus. And to say to Him, Jesus, I want you not only to live in my heart, I want you to settle down in it, to make yourself at home in my heart, that it might be your permanent abode. Because in that way, you are caring for the essence of your soul, doing the best thing you can for your spiritual heart.